This is a really interesting section of the Gita. It's not complicated, but it's interesting, and Krishna really presents a theology here that is nuanced and is typical for the old world, but it's not a theology which is super common nowadays. In general, people don't study theology. So it's not that people are exposed to theology A, but not theology B or C. It's not like we're dealing with people in the world nowadays who've made some kind of study of various types of theologies. A. That's point number one. But if there was a kind of a generic theology that people are aware of, it would be there's like Jesus is God, or maybe there's a Trinity, kind of a triune deity of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Or maybe like some kind of like Islamic God, just, there's a God and everybody else, and there's not too much nuance. Although even, Allah has a Shekinah and some other feminine forms, and in some forms of Islam. And then maybe there's like an impersonalism theology that, everybody's one. Everything merges into a white light. So it's not that there's no concept of God in people's imaginations. It's just, it's not like people sit down and learn different theologies and the nuances of them and how they compare and contrast to other ones. People don't do that. So you either got the we're all one / you merge into the white light kind of option, or there's God and everybody else. And then sometimes there might be some different variations within that deity, like a triune deity, a Trinitarian deity, something like that. Although most people just don't really know what that means. They just hear it and repeat it without really, having a sense of it. Even within like Christianity, there's this thing called the hypostatic union, which is the idea that Jesus was fully human, because he's described as being human, and fully divine. And this is an attempt to reconcile various statements in the New Testament about Jesus, where he's described as being God and also as being mortal. And an attempt to reconcile those, they came up with this thing called the hypostatic union, which is the idea that Jesus is fully God and fully man simultaneously. It's actually an unworkable, philosophical, nonsensical, illogical idea. Doesn't make any sense. It's unreasonable. It kind of goes against logic and ends up just positing a straight contradiction. There's not really a lot of nuance to it. But that's an attempt to deal with statements about Jesus' divinity as well as his humanity. And that doctrine, got popularized over centuries, but you can see the beginnings of it even in the Nicene Creed, although it wasn't fully fleshed out that time. You could see the beginnings of it in the early creeds of Christianity. And then you have theosis, which is like a kind of a concept which is very standard in Orthodox Christianity and is also there in the biblical tradition, that you become divinized. And that you become, and there's statements in the Bible like this, you become like Christ unto the Father, and you actually become divinized through spirituality and grace. And there's some sense in which, not that you become like God the Father, but you become a sharer in that divine legacy, beyond merely going back to heaven. And you become Christ-like. And those statements are also found, sporadically in the Bible, although they're not very popular. And to account for those, then there are different theories about how close you can get and how divine-like and how God-like you can become through grace. So that, even within the regular garden variety Christianity and then, there's all sorts of theories about the crucifixion. There's ransom theory, that Jesus was taken as ransom for our sins, and then Jesus cheated the devil by resurrecting himself so that no one had to actually die. And so there's it's like when you get into it, and there's like Calvin's idea of monergism, which is a more recent idea in the last 500 years or so, coming from the great Protestant theologian John Calvin, that it's monergism, that ultimately God decides who goes back to heaven and who doesn't. And then that, of course, leads to determinism, and then evil becomes God's fault because there's not a synergism where the two of us, God and man, collectively create our divine life. But it's monergism, just God himself does the whole thing. And that leads to problems like determinism, and that evil becomes God's fault, which didn't get worked out by Calvin. So just even with like the Christianity you learn about, there are theological ideas and competing ideas and different theories that have been around over thousands of years that are learned by clergy, and specifically by theologians, and they sit down and study them. Sometimes in Latin, sometimes in Greek, sometimes in Hebrew, and they learn their tradition, and they read thoughts and ideas about their tradition going back millennia, going back a couple thousand years in the case of Christianity. And the same things there in Islam. There's different schools of jurisprudence within Islam that analyze how Sharia law should be applied. Salafi and Hanbali and different schools of Islam as well. And they venerate different saints and hold different hadiths, post-Quranic writings, as being sacred, and and then follow either Ali or other saints that came after Muhammad as being the heirs to his legacies and the original caliphs. And they have different theories and ideas about how to analyze the Quran and apply it in life. And there's schools within Islam as well, beyond just Shia and Sunni. There's within Sunni there's these different schools. So there's a theology here that Krishna's about to espouse, and it has a history in the West called Scala Naturae. It goes back to Aristotle. It was around from the time of the ancient Greeks. It came up in later writings as the great chain of being, and it's got a long history in Western thought, but nobody studies it, so it's pretty foreign. So it's really nicely articulated in these verses. And so we're just going to go through them, and there's a theology in there, an idea about the nature of God and God's relationship to the world, and what's important, and how to envision God, and how to think about God, and what kind of lessons you're supposed to get, and it paints a picture for you. And so I want to go through it And it's probably about 10 verses. And then we can discuss it. But you got to listen. You got to pay attention. You got to open your books, 9:15, and you're going to have to read along with me and really pay attention. Otherwise, you're not going to get it. And then I'm just going to have to teach it to you from scratch, which I don't want. I want you guys to try. And so knowing that we're encountering an ancient theology that paints a picture of God and the world, that gives you something to sink your teeth into, that solves some problems and paints a picture, knowing that you should be able to make some sense out of it. And then we'll discuss it. But I want you guys to get somewhere on your own. Jnana yagyena cha api anye. And even there are others. Yajanto mamupasate. And even there are others who worship me with the sacrifice of knowledge. And there are others, and they worship me with the sacrifice of knowledge. And by sacrificing to me, there's a couple ways you can read this. By the sacrifice of knowledge and even others, they worship me sacrificing. So this could be one group of people, the others who worship Krishna with the sacrifice of knowledge, but the word yajantaha is repeated twice, and so yagya is repeated twice, yagyena, jnana yagyena, with the jnana yagya, cha api anye, even others with the jnana yagya, with the sacrifice of knowledge, yajanta mam upasate, they worship me sacrificing. So that could be two groups of people who do sacrifices and who also do the sacrifice of knowledge. Ekatvena, with oneness. Pritakvena, with difference. Bahuda vishvato mukam, by various manifestations. It's like literally by me being placed variously with my face, with my universal face, my face in all directions, facing everywhere. So these people, they worship me with the jnana yagya, or they worship me with sacrifice as one, as many, or facing everywhere. Vishvato mukha means like universally faced. And it's a reference to the Vishvarup, or the universal form, which Hindus are largely aware of. The idea that you conceive of the universe as God. The planets existing within the body of God. The water is his blood or semen. The rivers are his veins. The trees are the hairs of his body. The stones are his bones. The universe is his body. And the planets and solar systems exist and form almost like a constellation, but it's God. And the sun and the moon are his eyes. The sunrise and the sunset are his dress, etc. That's what's being referred to, the Vishvata Mukha, the universally faced one. The one with like the universal mouths. Bahuda, like placed in many different ways, manifested in many different ways. You take these two words together, Bahuda Vishvato Mukham, as adverbs, and so Ekatvena Pritakvena, in oneness and indifference in difference, and then as the universe. So that's a theology. There's the people who take shelter of the Mohini Prakriti, Ashrita. They take shelter of the Mohini Prakriti, the illusion. And then there's the people who take shelter of the Daivi Prakriti, the spiritual nature. And those people are Mahatmas. And they are always worshiping me. And they are doing kirtan. Satatam kirtayanto mam. Yatantascha dridha vrataha. And they take vows to me and they strive towards me and they do kirtan. So Krishna outlined devotees. He said there's non-devotees who are an illusion, and then the people who are in reality are devotees. And then cha'apiyanye, and there are even others. And those others aren't devotees, but they worship God through the sacrifice of knowledge, or they worship Him in oneness, in diversity, and as the universe. What is this describing? You should have enough to weigh in now and be able to give a purport to this. Now, Dom's got his hand up, and he's probably going to say something smart, and then all you guys in my book are stupid. Once Dom says something smart, my assumption is all of you are stupid and have nothing valuable to say. Because you're probably not going to be able to outthink him. And so if you don't go first, you're probably not going to have anything to say. And then you're just dumb in my book, and which means you failed. I'm a teacher, I'm testing you, you failed. So my strong advice is get your hands up now and offer some commentary on what we're talking about. Yes. Yell at me.
Could be describing there's people who believe there's some sort of higher power connecting things but don't necessarily have a specific conception of that.
It could be there's people who believe in a higher power but don't have a specific conception of God. Where do you get that? Where do you get that from the verse?
The universal form.
That doesn't sound like they don't have a concept. That sounds like they have a very specific concept.
Personal conception.
It sounds semi-personal. What you're doing is you're trying to force the verse into some weird New Age bubble you've created that the verse doesn't fit in. Do you see how you're doing that? There isn't a lack of specificity in these verses. This verse is chock full of 3 or 4 different four at least, maybe 5, but probably 4 different theologies, different ideas about the fundamental nature of God. There's no vagueness. They're quite specific ideas. Bailey.
So I think
Yell.
In the verses prior, Krishna speaks about who a devotee is and who a devotee isn't. And this kind of seems like almost a stepping stone from the non-devotee to the devotee through...
Where's the idea that it's a stepping stone from the non-devotee to the devotee? Krishna says, some people take shelter of illusion. They go down. Everything they do is in vain. Some people take shelter of my transcendental energy, and they're great souls and they're devotees who are always doing kirtan and striving towards me. Where is there an indication that Krishna is saying sometimes those people in illusion make a step towards becoming a devotee but not a full step? There's nothing. You just made that up. Just like he made something up. It's not there in the verse at all. He just made it up. You see that? And which sucks because both you guys are each onto something good, but you're just cursing yourselves by adding weird things in which cannot be justified by the verse. Yes?
It just seems like it's an homage to another category or other categories of people. You have people in pure illusion, you have the devotees, and then you have other people who are worshiping, in different ways.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if it's an homage. That might be strong language. It sounds cool to say it, homage. So you get points for saying a cool word. But I don't think it's the appropriate word for what we're describing. It is, however, an acknowledgement. I know. But an homage means you're honoring something. You know what I mean? I guess you could mean it kind of in a colloquial way as a nod to something. But really an homage means like an honoring something and kind of like in some ways like almost promoting something. But it is a nod to or an acknowledgement of yet another category. That category may be between or it may be a third category. It's really a separate conversation. There's certainly nothing about it being a stepping stone. Okay? It would seem to be in between, but not necessarily a stepping stone because there's no indication that those people who are in illusion, are just going to like think about this stuff. This is some other people that exist in the universe that are not straight devotees and are not straight non-devotees. That's exactly what this is, right? It's an acknowledgement. And there are like 4 categories. Go.
I was going to say that
You got to run with that. You got to improve on what he said. Go. Loud.
Those people who are surrendering on a transcendental nature are not definitionally devotees. There is like people who are surrendering to Krishna's transcendental nature, but are not necessarily worshiping him with bhakti, but are doing other things, still taking.
Where does it say they're surrendered to his transcendental nature? It doesn't say that. That glorification is specifically about the devotees. Now there's other people. They're not necessarily sheltered by the transcendental potency. That was specific for devotees. This is other people, and they're being described. And you, being Indian, should be able to dig into the verse and pick up on the idea that I'm looking for things in the verse, and you should not commit the same fatal flaw that these 2 guys did of just adding something in that's not there. Is anybody else picking this up? Janava, I'll only say nice stuff to you. You have to yell at me, though.
How you were saying that it's describing a type of person, I feel like it's describing like a jnana yogi, which is more like about knowledge, cultivating knowledge. So that's just an aspect.
Yes. So one thing it described was someone who worships Krishna with the sacrifice of knowledge. And that's someone who is more into wisdom than they are into devotion. But their wisdom is directed towards an absolute, towards Krishna. And so they're still worshiping him. Yajantaha mam. They're worshiping me. But they're not doing kirtan and striving for me. They're worshiping me jnana yajna with the sacrifice of knowledge. And they're anye. They're others. So they're not devotees. They're others. Krishna differentiates them from devotees by saying they are others. And so now we have a category where it's not a jnani which is evil and against Krishna. It's a jnani which is looking towards Krishna, but is not in the category of bhakti per se, but is nonetheless worshiping Krishna. And this is a real category. And you know people like this. This is a descriptor of something you actually see in the world. You see people who study books, and that's kind of as far as they go, and they encounter wisdom, and that's as close as they get to God. I'm giving you a tool to now understand the entire verse. If you didn't get it, you're now profoundly dumb, instead of just dumb. More, yes. Yes, he is creating a hierarchy by referencing these guys are bad, these guys are good, and these are others, which means they're not as good as the good, and they're not as bad as the bad. Certainly there's a hierarchy there, but I was looking for something a little more like digging into the verse, and I gave you guys the key. Anybody else? Yes?
I thought this verse was talking about exactly what you spoke about earlier. The first part, one without a second, is people who worship just one God, and then
100%. I've been giving you guys tools the whole time, which is why I'm disturbed by your ignorance, because I literally gave you the tools that would enable you to unpack this verse in the beginning of class, because I'm a good teacher. So 100%, I purposely did that to give you a springboard. You got more to say now, right? Good. So yes, run with that.
okay, and then the second part, as diverse in
All right, good. You're trying to add them up like directly. I wasn't quite meaning it like that. I don't know if those are good fits. I don't know if anything in Christianity is a really good fit to this. I'm not sure about that. I don't think anything in Christianity is a really good fit to this. It's a little different. And the words are in the verse. Ekat vena, with oneness. Pritak vena, with difference. Bahuda, vishvato mukam. And in various manifestations as the face of the universe. And jnana yagena, with the sacrifice of wisdom. What do we get? What's being described here? And the key I gave you, that I'll repeat now again, is that these are real people you meet. Krishna is describing the religious landscape all over the world for all time, including in ancient India, with some that are specific to ancient India, but a lot of this is universal for all time. Dom, jump in.
Krishna started by saying that those who don't respect his personal form are foolish, but there are great souls who worship him with determination and devotion. When he says there are others, he's now dropping that honorific term of Mahatma, or great soul. So they're not Mahatmas like the devotees, but they're acknowledged, they're others. And they're not devotees because their conception is not conducive to a devotional relationship with God. Either they think they're ultimately one.
Stop. Everything you've said thus far I agree with. You did pick some specific points out from the verses, which I might not have seen as being the most important features of the previous verses. But he's strung together ideas from the previous verses and now is incorporating ideas from this verse. And I agree with every single thing you've said so far. I might have said a little different, but I can't fault anything you said. It's all excellent. Keep going.
So the others, they have a certain conception of God that's not conducive to a devotional relationship.
Got it?
First one is ekatvena. If you think you're ultimately one, then there's no two people to love each other.
Do you remember when I said there's this white light you merge into and everything becomes one? That's ekatvena. People who have a concept that there's a oneness. Of course, if there's a oneness, there's no room for love. So they wouldn't be devotees. But they're also not atheists or in total illusion. That is an aspect of divinity. There is some truth to that, like the Holy Spirit within Christianity. And so the ekatvena is people who worship the oneness. We're all part of the same thing, one blood, merging into the white light. That's a real thing. You meet people like that. You know people like that. You felt like that. That's a real idea about the nature of God and your relationship with God that people all over the world have, and Krishna's acknowledging them and fitting them into a place below the great soul devotees who love me, but not as bad as the completely beguiled materialists. And therefore there is a hierarchy being created. But I want to dive into the verse. You were going to say something?
What you were just saying, is that like that merges to one? Is that like a Brahmin idea?
Yeah. Like what you would think of as a Brahman idea. Exactly. A Brahman idea, a monistic idea, an undifferentiated, homogenized monism, and everything ultimately merges and becomes one. Like almost like a Buddhist idea. You lose your individuality. There's a spirituality everything participates in, but there's no room for individuality. And self-realization consists of kind of losing your identity. There's no room for love, but there is some kind of pious, primordial soup that you become one with. Right? Exactly. And so whether we refer to it as Brahman or whether we refer to it in English language or through a number of different terms, I just gave you half a dozen. It's a thing. It's a real thing. That's one. Yes?
The diversity one is just like the many like demigods.
Yeah, polytheism, right? Yeah, polytheism, right? Could be even pantheism. Polytheism isn't as popular nowadays, but all of us are familiar with polytheism, the various gods and goddesses, or various elements within nature or paganism. I mean, it's not like we don't have some familiarity with its different divinities, right? You get it now? So now we've got the Jnana Yajna, the people who are worshiping me with the sacrifice of knowledge, those people who love wisdom and don't kind of like that's God for them. We got that one. Okay, good. Now we got the Ekatvena with oneness and Pritakvena with difference. And it's a standard monism, Brahman type deal, or a standard polytheism. And that just leaves us with one category, Bahuda Vishvato Mukam, as diversely manifested and universe, like at the face of the universe. And that would be
Just like worshiping the universe.
maybe either it's A, pantheism, or pantheism could be linked to the Pritakvena, like the paganism and pantheism and the elements of this world. And you could say that there's a special Hare Krishna Hindu idea of a universal form, also called a Vishvarup, which doesn't really exist in other religions, which is special and different, and isn't really pantheism, but is this almost like a Pangea, Mother Nature, the universe as deity idea. Now the truth is, it's not specific to Hinduism. There is Skala Natari, there is this idea that God, the good, the true, and the beautiful, created the universe and everything's connected to him. And when you find a noble metal, what's a noble metal? Gold. And what's an ignoble metal? Lead or iron. And what's a noble tree? A fruit or flower producing tree. And what's an ignoble tree? A thorn producing tree. And what's a noble human? A king. And what's an ignoble human? A serf. And what's a noble fish? A shark. And what's an ignoble fish? Just some little guppy type deal. And you can divide the world. And when you look at the world and you see powerful, majestic things in this world, they are a reminder of God. Help him out. Be menacing. And so this is this Skala Natri, this natural order of the universe, where everything is connected to a great chain of being. And when you find beautiful people or beautiful trees or beautiful elements, those things are closer to God. And when you find ugly things, those things are further away from God. But everything's ultimately connected on some level. Good? Thank you. That's what I'm looking for. You guys be menacing, so I don't have to. That's what I'm looking for. Everybody lift weights, everybody learn how to fight, and then you guys go out and menace the weirdos so I can just stand here and give class. This is the goal. So there's a couple ways we could solve for this. A, it's pantheism. Right? The universe is God. Mother Nature. Pangea. Right? B, it's different. Okay? In which case we would then take Mother Nature and we would lump that in with Pritakvena, with kind of a pagan type worship. You get it? I'm just seeing all this fireworks going off on the screen. I don't know why, but it's cool. Huh? I do that? I make fireworks? I don't know. I can't do it now. But before it was like crazy. I was like, this is the best thing ever. So, you could do it either way. And if you did want to say it's different, then you would just describe it as different. If you want to say it was the same, then you would start to look at Western ideas from ancient Greek philosophy and the natural order and the great chain of being and writings that are there from early Christianity and before about this idea that the whole universe is connected together and there's a sacred order, and God is that sacred order. And that's like the universal form, but a Western manifestation of it. So what we're left with is you can worship God through wisdom, or you can worship him in oneness, like a Brahman type deal, or in difference, which is paganism, or also maybe pantheism, or you can then have this universal form, the universe is God, and that would be a immanent, this worldly, pantheistic, the universe is God, idea which has correlates in ancient Greek thought, although it's not that popular these days. Because again, people don't study theologies these days. And so these ideas are not as well understood. But these are categories. And these are categories that you have some familiarity with. They're not foreign. You just have to think carefully. And then when you read verses like this, you'll be able to make sense out of it. Did you guys follow that? So it wasn't vague and indefinite like you were saying. It was like it was the exact opposite. It was totally definite, and Krishna actually packed a wallop and described multiple different conceptions of God in a single verse. It was creating a hierarchy, but that doesn't do honor to the verse. The verse was giving us definitive information about some other, let's say, semi-theistic, partially theistic, not quite devotional ideas that exist in the world. And what was it that you said? Yeah, but there's no indication it's a stepping stone. It may be, it may not be, but in this verse, we're not getting that. What we are getting is a description of these different theologies. You learned something, right? As many times you read the Gita, you learned something today, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, because I'm a good teacher, and I'm like teaching you guys good stuff. And I'm unpacking the text for you. But you got to meet me halfway and bring your A game. So you were heading the right direction. You were like, some of the stuff you said before, you just didn't apply it quite right. You tried to use the Christian model, which didn't quite do it. I guess the oneness, right? There's a God and everybody else, maybe. Or there's a difference between God and us. It's just a little bit of a rough fit. It's not really what Krishna was most likely intending. These points I just made are what he was most likely intending. Do you get it now? Okay, this was easy. It's now going to get interesting. This isn't like blowing my mind. This is cool. But this isn't what blows my mind and makes me think, wow, Krishna's masterful. The next verses are what makes Krishna, to me, seem masterful. And they're going to be harder to understand than this one. Because they're less culturally similar. And they're more exotic. But you can do it. Just listen carefully. Here we go. Let's read the last verse. Others who engage in sacrifice by the cultivation of knowledge worship the Supreme Lord as the one without a second, as diverse in many, and in the universal form. But it is I who am the kratu, the sacrifice, the ritual, or the intention. Kratu is oftentimes used to represent like an Ashwamedha yajna, like a big horse sacrifice, like a major sacrifice. Kratu. I am the kratu. Aham yajna. I am the yajna Okay, so that would be like two different kinds of sacrifice. You could be like, this one is an occasional sacrifice, this one's a daily sacrifice, this one is the overall sacrifice, this is the fire yagya. You got to start to differentiate. You follow? Aham kratu, aham yagya, swadaham. Swada means one's own share. And it refers to when you worship the Pitris or the Devas, one portion of the food offered in the sacrifice is offered to each god. Swadha, one's own share. So that would be like a portion of the food offered in the sacrifice. Usually it would be like rice, like barley and dal mixed together, or milk and grains mixed together. Sweet rice is a very common item which was offered in a yagna. So rice and milk cooked together is a very common, it's called payas, very common ingredient. Or some khichdi-like substances also. But they build the fire, and while they're doing the yagna, they're offering ghee, but they also offer these food items. And then they're offering to many gods in the old Vedic yagnas. And so each deity would get swadha, they get their own portion. Swadaham, aham oshadam, I am the herb. Could be a reference to soma, ephedra, this intoxicating substance which was, through an alchemical process, turned into a divine elixir. Also could be just herbs in general that come from the mountain that, work themselves into and are relevant for various sacrifices. But you hear this? Aham kratu, I am the kratu, the ritual. Aham yagya, I am the yagya, the sacrifice. Swadaham, I am the swada. Aham oshadam, I am the herb. Are you guys following this? Mantroham, I'm the mantra, because you have to chant mantras when you do the yagya. Aham evajyam, I am the ghee. I am the ghee. Ajam means ghee. Evajam, I'm the ghee. So now the ghee is being named. Aham agni, I'm the fire. Aham hutam, I am the pouring out of the oblation. So I'm the fire, I'm the oblation being poured out, I am the ghee that's being poured out, and the act of pouring it out. You follow? I'm the swadha, the various food items that are offered. I'm the mantra. I'm the yagya, I'm the kratu, and I am the herb, the oshadam. Listen to how it reads. But it is I who am the ritual, I the sacrifice, the offering to the ancestors, the healing herb, the transcendental chant. I am the butter and the fire and the offering. I am the father of the universe, the mother, the support, and the grandsire. I am the object of knowledge, the purifier and the syllable Om. I am also the Rig, the Sama, and the Yajur Veda. Pittaham asya jagato, mata, data, pitamaha. I'm the father of the universe, and the mother, and the grandfather. Vidyam, pavitram, omkar, rik, sama, yajur, evacha. I am that is to be known, the object of knowledge. I'm the purifier. I'm Om. I'm the Rik, Sama, and Yajur Vedas. Something's happening here. I'm going to keep reading. Gatir Bharta Prabhu Shakshi. I'm the goal. I'm the sustainer. I'm the master. I'm the witness. Nivasa. I'm the abode. Sharanam, I'm the shelter. Suhrit, I'm the best friend. Prabhava Pralayastanam, I'm the beginning and the end, and the maintenance of all things. The ground. Nidhanam, the resting place or the treasure. Bijam Avyam, and the inexhaustible seed of all existence. Tapami Aham, I send forth heat. Aham Varsham, Nigranani, Utsrijami Cha, and I withhold and send forth rain. I heat the world, and I withhold and send forth rain. Amrita chaiva mrityus cha. I am deathlessness and death. Sat asat chaham arjuna. And I am existence and non-existence. I am effect and cause. I give heat and I withhold and send forth rain. I am immortality. I am death personified. Both spirit and matter are in me. I am the goal, the sustainer, the master, the witness, the abode, the refuge, and the most dear friend. I am the creation and the annihilation, the basis of everything, the resting place, and the eternal seed. Those who study the Vedas and drink the Soma. This is like a reference to the old Vedic rites. Those who study the 3 Vedas and drink Soma. Seeking the heavenly planets, worship me indirectly. Such people are purified of sinful reactions. They take birth in the pious heavenly planets of Indra, Surendra Loka. Indra is mentioned here. Where they enjoy godly delights, divine delights. Divi Deva Bhogan. They enjoy godly delights. When they have enjoyed vast heavenly sense pleasure and the results of their pious activities are exhausted, this is all a clean translation, they return to this mortal planet again. Those who seek sense enjoyment by adhering to the principles of the Vedas achieve only repeated death. They come and they go desiring various desirable things. They follow the Vedas and they go, and having enjoyed vast enjoyment in heavenly places, they again come back once their piety is exhausted. But those who always worship me with exclusive devotion, meditating on my transcendental form, ananyas chintayanto mam, those who think of me and nothing else, ye jana paryupasate, and thus perfectly worship me. Tesham nityabhiyuktanam, for those who are always yoked to me through their thoughts about me. Yogakshemam vahamiham, I give them what they lack and I preserve what they have. Ye api anya devata bhakta, but those who are bhaktas of other gods, yajante shradhaya andita, and they worship those other gods with faith. Tepi mameva kaunteya, they actually are worshiping me. They're even worshiping me. Yajanti, they're worshiping me. Avidhi purvakam, but they're doing it incorrectly. Avidhi means not in the proper way. Avidhi purvakam, not according to the proper way. Vidhi is a statement of the Vedic rites. The Vedic rites enjoin you. They give you vidhi and nisheda. Do this, don't do this. Avidhi means you're doing something, but you're doing it in a wrong way, like a fundamentally a wrong way. It's not a light term. Because the Vedas teach vidhi and nisheda. They teach proper observance and what should be avoided. And now these people, they're worshiping me, which sounds good, but they're doing it avidhi purvakam. They're doing it wrong. But those who always worship me with exclusive devotion, meditating on my transcendental form, to them I care what they lack, I preserve what they have. Those who are devotees of other gods and who worship them with faith, they actually worship only me, but they do so in the wrong way. Ahami sava yagyanam bhokta cha prabhur eva cha. But I am the master and enjoyer of all yagna, of all sacrifice. Natumam abhijananti tatvena. But those who do not understand this in truth, atas shavantite, then they fall. Yanti deva vratan deva, and those who are sworn to the gods go to the gods. Pitri yanti pitri vrata, those who are sworn to the forefathers, ancestors, go to them. Bhutani yanti bhuteja, those who worship ghosts go to them. Yanti mam yajinopi mam. But my devotees, those who worship me, go to me. I am the only enjoyer and master of all sacrifices. Therefore, those who do not recognize my true transcendental nature fall down. Those who worship the demigods will take birth among the demigods. Those who worship the ancestors go to the ancestors. Those who worship ghosts and spirits will take birth among such beings. And those who worship me will live with me. Patram pushpam palam toyam yome bhaktya prayachati. And those who offer me with love and devotion, with bhakti, bhaktya, patram pushpam palam toyam yome bhaktya prayachati. One who offers me with bhakti a leaf, a flower, a fruit, or water. Tadupam bhaktyupahritam. That thing which was offered with devotion, bhaktyupahritam, the word bhakti is used twice. Ashtami prayatatmana. I eat that which is offered by a pure soul. If one offers me with love and devotion a leaf, a flower, a fruit, or water, I will accept it. And Yat karoshi, yad ashnasi, yad juhosi, dadasya, yat tapasyasi konteya, tat karushva madarpanam. Yat karoshi, whatever you do. Yat karoshi, yad ashnasi, whatever you eat. Yad juhosi, whatever you offer. Dadasya, whatever you give away. Yat tapasyasi, whatever austerities you perform. Eva konteya, tat karushva, that you do, madarpanam, as an offering to me. Whatever you offer, whatever you eat, whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer, give away, and whatever austerities you perform, do that, O son of Kunti, as an offering to me. We'll stop there. This is a beautiful theology that Krishna's laid out. Explain it to me. You don't have to do all of it. Explain some of it to me. Yes, Draupadi.
This is establishing pluralism, where you described in another class that
there is a form of pluralism here, where Krishna is acknowledging the worship of other gods, 100%. He's not doing so very favorably. So a hierarchy is created where those other people are not as high, but they're not cast out as being evil, but they are relegated to a lower position. So there is a type of pluralism, but that pluralism is along with recommendations to do it right. Good. That's there. 100%. What else? Yes?
all the different theologies, all the different forms of worship and ritual and all that stuff, all at the end of the day going to Him, to Krishna. Krishna is the highest form of divinity.
Krishna does now relegate every other form of worship to being ultimately about Him. That's not necessarily sectarian, because Krishna's not saying me versus Jesus. He's saying me as the origin and dissolution of everything versus subcategory gods that obviously are not a proper omnipotent, omnipresent, omnibenevolent God. So, but he is creating an idea where the topmost divinity, this omnipotent, omnibenevolent deity, is at the top, and everything is seen in relationship to that deity. Yes, excellent. There's more. Hidden. Loud.
Krishna took the categories he was explaining before, and he's sort of clarifying that. So there's a form of ignorance in those categories, and he's clarifying. So he's explaining sort of when people are worshiping, when they're searching for knowledge, he is the ultimate.
Yeah, there's a sense where Krishna is critiquing all those other forms of worship by saying, but I am the knowledge. I am the sustainer. I am giving your worship, doing a yajna for rain, but I'm giving the rain. You're worshiping the fire, but I'm the fire. You're attached to the Vedic rite, but I am every aspect of the Vedic rite you could be attached to. This is what you guys will miss. None of you will say this. because none of you are trained in Vedic ritual. But people are attached to the Vedic ritual. It becomes their life. The ghee, the offering, the mantras, the herb, the specific order the rite's done, in the Vedic text where the rite is listed, the sacred fire that's kindled, the mantras which are chanted. People become incredibly devoted to those things. And Krishna's saying, I'm all of that. That's all about me. That's all indirectly trying to get to me. I'm heating the world. I'm sending the rain, not the Vedic yajna. You who are worshiping indirectly like this, yeah, you're worshiping me, but you didn't get it right. And you'll actually fall down. And if you're attached to the Vedic rites, you're materialistic and you don't get it. And you haven't evolved to devotion. And so you'll fall down again. And I'm now taking this incredible, elaborate worship with these big soma yagnas that take hundreds of people and hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in today's currency to perform. And I'm saying you could just offer me, with love and devotion, a leaf of flower for the water. That's it. You can do this massive yajna and you'll come back down again. Or you can just think of me and I'll take care of everything. Or offer me a leaf of flower for the water with bhakti, and that which was offered with bhakti, I'll accept that. And just whatever you do in life should be an offering to me. And so Krishna's solving the Vedic ritual puzzle. And he's referencing all these sacred items that show up in Vedic texts. And he's directly linking them to him to paint a picture of a theology of devotion building on the philosophical ideas that he introduced of worshiping in oneness and difference and as the universe and attached to Vedic rites and sacrificing, the sacrifice of knowledge. And then he's saying this is all about me. And there's like an incredible sense in which, like, you could imagine if somebody was like, it's difficult, I think, for you guys to appreciate it because you're not attached to the Vedic yagna. And so when you hear these references, they don't like pierce your heart. I see you, but I'm on the roll. And so they don't pierce your heart. But to give you an idea, imagine if, you were reading that Hallmark card and, you're walking with God and you say, my whole life, you've always been there with me. And I couldn't see you. But when I looked down, I saw there were 2 sets of footprints. And I knew you were with me. But then when I was going through the most difficult time of my life, I looked down and I couldn't see the 2 sets of footprints. Why did you abandon me in that difficult moment? And then Krishna says, no, I was carrying you. The footprints are mine. You were too weak to walk. I carried you during that difficult time of your life. And there's this feeling of oh my God, you never left me. You never abandoned me. When you hear these verses, I'm the mother and the father and the grandfather of the universe. I'm withholding and sending forth rain. I'm giving heat. I'm the fire. I'm the ghee. I'm the mantra. I'm the herb. I'm the ritual. I'm the offering. I'm the forefathers. And you're doing these huge, elaborate sacrifices, but it's just you're worshiping me, and you're going to come back again. And if you just think of me, that's enough. I'll take care of everything. I've never forgotten you. I'm not lost in all these rituals. I'm not lost in all these items. I'm not lost in all this stuff in the world. I'm there behind every tree. I saw a Muslim cleric preaching the Quran with a sword in his hand in Iran, really heavy. And everybody had guns. It was thousands of people, and he was just bellowing with real fervency. And he was saying someday, peace, the whole world will become Dar al-Salam, a house of peace. No more Dar al-Harb, a house of war. And on that day, the Muslim will walk through the town. And the tree will say, hey, my Muslim brother, the Jew is hiding behind me. Come and cut off his head. And the stone will say, hey, Muslim brother, the Jew is hiding underneath me. Come and cut off his head and kill him. And on that day, Allah's grace will be everywhere. He had this vision of perfection. It was a violent vision of genocidally wiping out the Jews, where even the stones and the trees were involved in the genocide. And people were just losing their minds. They were like working themselves up into a lather and firing their guns. He was swinging the sword. And it was like he was feeling the Holy Spirit. And everybody was feeling it. But, you know, for my cup of tea, it was weird. And it's like that for us. Krishna's the mother and the father, and he's behind every yajna. And he's behind all the things you're attached to, and all the sacred stuff you saw, and all the stuff you ever read, and all the stuff you ever thought about, and every category you ever got attached to, and all the different feelings you ever had. It's all going to Krishna. It's all moving towards Krishna. And you've just been missing it the whole time and seeing these disparate threads and like some little thin connections, but it's actually all like perfectly in order. And there's a solve to the whole universe. It's the key that just unlocks the whole universe, like the Matrix. And everything all of a sudden makes sense. And Krishna's always been there, always been waiting for you, always loved you. Like with bhakti, like impossibly so. Like was just waiting for you to turn towards him, and he'll just unlock the whole universe and show you the solution to everything. And it's simple. And it makes sense out of all the Vedas. And it kind of honors everything you ever loved, but makes it infinitely more beautiful. And it trumps everything you thought, and like miraculously like breaks your mind by showing you a synergy and a simplicity and a beauty and a perfection and like a harmonization, a harmonic convergence, and a harmonization of the entire world. But it's beautiful and non-violent and not kitschy and not denigrating of others. Do you guys get it? That's what's happening here. I am this, I am that, I am this. The power of it, it's like because it's Krishna who loves you. And like all these things you thought were cool and sacred, like they're ultimately just little flower petals like on the road to Krishna. And they're all ultimately threads that lead to Krishna. And they're all ultimately manifestations of Krishna's embracing of you as you turn away from him to the world. And the ritual doesn't lead you away from Krishna. And the philosophy doesn't lead you away from Krishna. It all is perfectly attuned to helping you love Krishna even more. And you can also let go of all of it and just think of Krishna. And just give Krishna a leaf of flower, fruit, or water. And his conclusion is ultimately just everything you do is an act of devotion to me. And it's like solves the entire material world. There's no more evil. There's no more negativity. There's no more turning away from Krishna. Everywhere you look, everywhere you turn, behind every leaf, behind every tree, behind every flower, is Krishna's smiling face, is a warm embrace. And you feel the sun to be like the embrace of your lover. And you feel the rain to be Krishna's tears bathing you. And the sun and the moon are the eyes of Krishna, not like watching you threateningly, but like doting after you, looking at you lovingly. Does that make sense? That's what's happening here. It's incredibly powerful because so many ideas and so many thoughts and so many conceptions and attachments and pious things all of a sudden just are in perfect attunement and leading to bhakti. And Krishna manages to outline all the religions of the world, all the basic categories, and show how they're all ultimately meant to lead to Krishna. When George Harrison was getting into the Hare Krishnas, he gave money to print the first Krishna book. Prabhupada told Shyam Sundar, George Harrison's best friend, who was there when George Harrison passed away, to ask him for the money. And Chandra never wanted to ask George Harrison for any money, but he had to because Prabhupada told him to. So he asked George Harrison. And George Harrison just looked bummed because he asked him for like whatever, 20 grand. George Harrison looked super bummed. And then the moment like George Harrison was looking at Shamsundar all bummed out, the lights in the house went out. The whole house went out. The power went out. And then a moment later, the power came back on. George said, I'll give you the money right now. Like, he like got it. Like, he had a doubt, but like, that was a miracle occurring to like, cure him of looking down on the fact that the devotees were asking him for money. And then he wrote the foreword. And there's like a handwritten note by George Harrison in the intro. It says, everyone's looking for Krishna. He didn't write that. We wrote that. It wasn't like George was that good of a theologian. We wrote that on his behalf. Maybe he wrote it and we wrote it for him and then he wrote it. I don't know how it worked out, but it was written by us, by Shamsundar and others. Everyone's looking for Krishna. There's that kind of idea in these verses. It's like we've always been looking for Krishna. And all these different ideas are they're just like attempts to get there. Little like snapshots in the darkness, little lights in the darkness appearing, giving some little vision. And you sort of know it's all meant to go together, but you never know how. And then Krishna hits you with something like this and just blows your mind. And perfectly marries all these different ideas with an ultimate devotion. And minimizes them, and glorifies them, and honors them, and fits them together like a jigsaw puzzle. And all of a sudden it's almost just like you like all these things, all this, and it's like the Rubik's Cube has been solved. Like a magic trick. I got it. It's just all a perfect tapestry. Like you've been looking at the back of the tapestry your whole life, and you see it's like it's always been a tapestry. And all those threads you saw going crazy in the back, there was a method to that madness, and now all of a sudden it's clear. Does that make sense? That's what's happening in these verses. And your ability to appreciate them is your ability to appreciate all the various categories Krishna's outlining. I tried to explain some of them, but a lot of them are real, like they're for like old school Vedic Hindus. And for those people especially, these verses are like a sledgehammer. But I wanted you guys to get it. I wanted you guys to be able to appreciate it. And that religions go for this kind of stuff. And then it becomes like, what's the vision? Is it like a unified effort to kill all the Jews? It's like, not feeling it. It sounds really lame. Like I'm not digging it. I dig the idea that you want some harmonic convergence, but the one you envision, I'm thinking is pretty, pretty poor. This, on the other hand, I look at this and I'm like, this is the most beautiful thing I've ever heard. I'm that herb. I'm that mantra. I'm all those things you ever thought were magical and wonderful. Those things are special because they're a spark of my splendor. They're leading to me. They're ultimately about me. I'm connected to the whole universe through this great chain of being. And then you can see it, and it's like it's a matrix, and all of a sudden you see it's all connected. I realize I'm repeating myself, but I'm trying my darndest to communicate to you guys so you guys get it. How'd I do? Feedback. Thank you.